So here we have another session of lockouts and extra axles and tag axles continue. When you get into multiple steer axles, and you remember we talked about your pivot point on the back axles on the back of the truck, going to be the point that truck pivots as you're going around the corner. Now, multiple axles, I had as many as 3 steer axles up front and 5 drive axles, well, 3 drive axles, 2 air axles in the back. It's because of the weight of the truck and where they're going. A lot of them going up into the tundra, up into the Arctic Circle and the ice roads, have a lot of extra axles. Everywhere they can put an axle, they put one so they can go across the permafrost longer in the spring when it's thawed. But, and then the extra axles looks as cool as beans. You can't wait to drive one of these puppies. The only danger is that immediately you need to find out what your pivot point is on that truck, because each one of these front axles steer at a different pace. So your front axle is going to be steering like crazy. The next axle back, because of the distance from the pivot point or the center of the truck, is not going to steer as much, and the next axle back is hardly going to steer at all. So you need to find out what your pivot point is, because you will start to take this truck around a corner and find yourself either into a telephone pole ahead of yourself or up on the curb or in the ditch, because this thing, all these tires are pushing you, but you didn't plan on how much it takes to turn one of these around. And you can figure if you're gonna even do a turn, you want at least a 20-acre field to do it in, and way plan ahead, buddy. If you're gonna make a U-turn or turn this truck around, you want a 40-acre field and a congressional note signed by 3 dead presidents and 2 congressmen and from your mother, possibly your father. But they do not do U-turns, you can't turn them around, and they do not turn corners. Okay, now let's talk about real quickly backing up. If anybody asks you to back up a vehicle, especially a heavy one or an RV, your best bet's to say, well, I've never really backed one up before, but if you'll sign this bill of lading, which puts the responsibility onto you, I'd be glad to try it. That's going to scare them enough to back the thing up themselves. It doesn't do any harm to act stupid at this point. It's going to be to your favor, because the rule for backing up trucks, or especially RVs, is don't back them up. And then rule number 2 is, the slower you back up a vehicle, the cheaper the damage is going to be. And I swear by that rule. I've proved it to myself too many times. Also, before you ever back up, if you're going to be dumb enough to back up, get out and walk through the motion yourself, looking up in the air. Because these things a lot of times are 13'6" tall, and you'll back right into some damn fool's drive-through or awning or trees or you name it. Whatever's above your head you don't expect. You don't look up there and expect that truck or RV to run into it. It's tall enough, it's gonna run into it, I guarantee it. So before you back, get your butt out of the seat and walk back there and walk through, physically walk through where you're gonna back this up to. Get somebody to spot you, and when you do, you explain to them, now you're gonna stop me when I am 5 foot from the door, the wall, the loading dock, the whatever it is, 5 foot. Then if you need to be closer, you get out, look at the distance, watch the distance on the ground as well as the mirror of where you're going to back, or mark it out on the pavement if you have to, of how far you have to be to hit that exactly. Hit that is not a good thing. To get that exactly right in the right place. Don't back up. I kind of want to apologize on this next one, because I have a bunch of little tiny subjects that I'm just going to toss at you. whether it does you any good or not, let's talk about air brakes. Now on your car or your pickup truck, there's surge brakes, and there's a little cylinder, and when you press on the pedal, the fluid goes in the cylinder and then it pushes the brake against the pad. On air brakes, this is not true. On an air brake system, it takes the minimum of 60 pounds of air to release the brake. So if there's less than 60 pounds, those brakes are going to lock up. There isn't any in between. They're either on or they're off. Above 60 to 90 and 120 pounds, which is about what you should be running at over 90 and no more than 120 pounds. That's when the pressure on that pedal gives you the pressure on that brake pad. But once it drops below 60, and as you get down towards 60, you'll start to hear the buzzers going off. Sometimes there's a flag that'll pop up, a red flag. The buttons are normally yellow for your air brakes. And to release them, you'll step on the pedal all the way hard and then release the brake. If you release the brake, that yellow button, push it in without stepping on the pedal, chances are one or two or maybe half of those brake shoes or brake cylinders are not going to release. So you're going to start down the road, and in about 10 miles you'll look back and your whole rig is on fire because you have 2 or 3 brake shoes and you don't get any gas mileage with the brakes on either. But your brake shoes have lit that drum up till it's white hot, and any fluid that's in there has boiled off, or the grease has boiled out and it's caught on fire. So you're literally, your day is over and your profit has just gone up in smoke. Oh, I like that. Has just gone up in smoke. There's no doubt about it. Oh, so as you are braking with surge brakes, you can pump the pedal, to give yourself brakes a little bit of a rest from the heat. But with air brakes, pumping that pedal, every time you pump the pedal, drops your air pressure. You will pump the pedal maybe a half a dozen times and be out of air. Your compressor cannot catch up. Your brakes, I don't care how fast you're going, every brake on that truck is going to lock up tight. You're going to come to a screeching halt. Hopefully there isn't 300 angry idiots doing 90 behind you, because they're going to pile right into you. On air brakes, the rule of thumb is to punch the brakes, and say that you're going downhill and you're picking up speed. You want to be at 55 miles an hour. This is just for number's sake. Sometimes it's 30. But let's say you want to be at 55 miles an hour. When that truck gets over 60 to 65, you want to apply the brakes hard and get yourself down to 10 miles below 60 miles an hour, and then release the brakes. So do it quickly, and so you surge it all at once. You just punch and let off it. That'll give the brakes time to cool, and it'll give the engine time to brake as you're coming down the hill. While we're on it, coming down the hill, you go down the hill as a rule of thumb 1 gear lower than what you went up the hill in. Not so dangerous going up hills, but where truckers lose their lives and their loads are going down the hill. And if you're smart, you never need to use your brakes going downhill anyway, because you have it a gear lower. That engine, either your Jake brake, which we'll talk about later, or the engine itself, you're in a low enough gear, it's going to slow the weight down. You don't even need your brakes. I've come all the way down Donner Pass and never used the brakes, primarily because I didn't have any. I hit a piece of metal coming off a truck and knocked a hole in the air cylinder on my bus, and I had a busload of people going down Donner Pass in California. If you know that, it is wild. There's nowhere to pull off, and you go straight downhill, seems like for a week. And I was down for about 45 minutes traveling downhill with traffic. All of a sudden I knocked one of the cylinders off the brakes. Now I know if I step on the brakes, the pressure is going to drop. The compressor's keeping up with 60 pounds plus. I was about 70 pounds, and it's teetering. I know if I step on the brakes, it's going to lock everything up and the trucks behind me are going to pile into me. I'm down in a low enough gear that I can shift down, and then I had to literally step on the gas to keep it going 55 miles an hour, but made it all the way down to the bottom where I could pull off. But that's the way you can run your load too, if you know which gear to be in. At least one gear slower than the way you went up the hill. I hope you're enjoying this documentary. I hope I'm not boring you too much, but thank you very much for watching. I hope if you can learn anything off from this, it's going to help save your life or make it more profitable. I'm tickled. More film at 11.